Master Your Life with Kate McKay. That is me, Kate McKay, and I am so thrilled that you've decided to join us. And I'm mostly thrilled that I get to introduce someone that just interviewed me, Brad Walsh. Welcome, Brad.
Wow. Thank you so much for having me here, Kate. It is an absolute pleasure and honor to be with you here today and to be part of your platform. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your world and share a little bit about the work that I'm doing in my journey. I appreciate you.
I honor you and having you here. So just a little bit about Brad before we dig in, because I have like a whole list of questions I want to ask. But Brad is the founder and creator of the Empowerography podcast. And that's the one I was interviewed in, and that will absolutely be shared in the show notes. He's a photographer and an advocate for amplifying the voice of women all over the world. Can't wait to dig into that. And so we're going to talk about that in particular, but can we start from the beginning?
Yeah, sure.
Because
Absolutely.
I just love interviewing men, particularly around the whole concept of warrior. What would you say the definition of a warrior is, Brad? How would you describe that?
I would say a warrior is someone who stands in their truth, stands in their power, and is who they authentically are and goes after what they want. Doesn't let anything stop them or hold them back from achieving those things that they want in life and going after those goals. That's my definition of a warrior, I would say.
Ooh, it's so good. And so when you were growing up, when you were
Mhm.
younger, did you have a role model for what like a man looked like or acted like? Who was that role model for you if you had one?
I didn't actually when I was younger. My biological father wasn't around very much. He was running around on my mom having an affair, so I didn't really have a male role model in my life with that displayed that and taught me that. So my role models were my mom and my grandmother.
Isn't that so crazy? You know, I
Mm.
did a bunch of research for Claim Your Inner Warrior for the book, and I would say that was the most consistent action and honestly the most tragic. That
Yeah.
you would think that men actually learned how to be a man through women, and how interesting, right? And how tragic that
Hmm.
that is the truth for you as well.
Yeah,
So
it is. It
powerful.
is. But I had those two incredibly strong role models in my life, my mom and my grandmother, and they are my heart. I owe them a debt that could never, ever be repaid for all that they sacrificed for me. So I honor
Mm.
them with all that they shared with me and taught me. And they raised me with the values of who I am today. And I wouldn't be the man I am today without those two women.
So powerful. So what would you say to the listeners who perhaps feel as though they didn't even have that, Brad, that they feel as though, you know what, no one showed me how, so I just had to figure it out?
That's a tough one. I mean, we depend upon people to guide us and teach us as we're growing up. Um, I guess it would be about surrounding yourself with good people, friends, other family members, not necessarily your mother or your father or your grandparents, but I think surrounding yourself with people who support you. I believe that we're not meant to do anything in this life alone. And community is such a big part of that. I remember when I was growing up, how big a part community played in my life too, with my friends and support systems around that as well. I can remember my mom babysitting children in the neighborhood and things like that. So there was that sense of community. I think that is so integral and so key to living a good life and living, in alignment, is surrounding yourself with people who are of like mind and who are there to support you. Because I think that that is part of why we're all here on this planet, is to support, lift, and cheerlead each other. So community is
Mm.
key too, I think.
So true. Well, they say that's the number one thing that a man can do if he's number one self-care thing that a man can
Hmm.
do is to have a community. And a lot of men don't even know where to start when they hear that. They're like, I don't know, my
Yeah.
wife sets up the plans, or, you know, we go watch sports or whatever that is. And I'm not criticizing that anyway, because I'm a man lover. I love men. And I think
Yeah.
that they are different. But what would
Yes.
you say the steps that someone could take if they feel like, what's a community? You know, because like
Um,
truly that's the hardest piece, is because how do you have deep and meaningful conversations with people as a man? And who role modeled that for you?
well, I think it starts with friends, with
Mm.
connections through your friends and who they're connected with. That's where the connection starts. That's where the community starts. And having conversation. I think that conversation is the catalyst for a lot of things. It's a catalyst for change. And that's how we learn, is through conversation, through asking questions, through connecting with people. So I think it starts with connecting through our friendships as men that we have with other men, and being able to be vulnerable enough to open up and have those conversations. It's, we are conditioned as boys growing up to not show emotion and not cry and stop crying like a little girl and this, that, and the other. But I mean, you have to get vulnerable. You have to just be who you authentically are, but connecting with those people who are of like mind. And like I said, I think through our friendships, that's how we start to find the communities and get connected.
So how would you describe then vulnerability? Because that word is like freaky to people, and to a lot of men that I've interviewed, it's actually like, yikes, man, I don't even know. Yeah. Just and honestly, it used to make me nervous only because I'm the alpha woman, right? And so I'm like, yo, I'm
Mhm.
used to doing everything by myself because I had to, because I wasn't like everybody else. I wasn't like the
Yeah.
typical woman. So I felt very like I thought I was a boy growing up because I was
Yeah.
getting yelled at like the boys. Sit down, shut up. Katie, stop talking. And I'm like, wait, what? How come I'm getting yelled at with Mark and John? But I mean, it was just, that was my reality. And so I felt like,
Mm.
wow, I had to do it alone. And I think that's the vibe of a lot of men, when it's don't cry,
Yeah.
suck it up, means
Yeah.
don't communicate your authentic needs.
Yes. And I mean, again, that's how I was raised, that it's okay, because I was raised by women. So it's okay to show your vulnerability. And I think that just being who you authentically are, and again, it goes back to surrounding yourself with people who are of like mind and who can resonate with who you are and connect with you on that level. I think it's just being your authentic self. And it is okay to share our feelings. We are human beings. We have feelings. We have emotions. That's part of our DNA. That's part of our makeup. So I think it's a difficult shift for people who have been raised, like boys specifically, who have been raised to not show their emotions. It's a very difficult thing to shift the mindset around that. But I mean, I think that we all have it within us, and we need to be able to express who we truly are and who we authentically are. Because if you're not doing that, you're not being who you fully are. You're not expressing your full self. So you're depriving the world of who you truly are. So I think you need to learn how to express that and get vulnerable and just be who you authentically are. It's okay to share your feelings. It's important that we know that that's okay.
Was it something you were naturally gifted at, with creating and maintaining friendships?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, like I said, I had amazing role models. My mom and my grandmother, they
Mhm.
always encouraged that it's okay to share your feelings. It's okay to be who you are. You have to talk about things. It's okay to talk about things and talk about how you're feeling. It's important to express that, because if you hold that in inside, you're going to explode. It's going to come out in other ways, and probably not so good ways. So I was always encouraged to share my feelings. This is where I guess I'm a different breed because of being raised by women. It helped shape who I am today, and embrace both, because as human beings, we have both the feminine and the masculine within us. So I was able to, because of how I was raised, embrace the feminine and the masculine side of who I am. So again, I have to credit my mom and my grandmother for all of that.
It's pretty magical. So what I don't hear is
Mhm.
bitterness. And the reason why I say that is, a lot of times you hear this, the man left and there was, it's like, oh, they had to do it on their own. And then oftentimes what that does is it casts a shadow on the sons of situations like that
Mm.
shadow of shame around not really having that role model, and my dad wasn't a good person, and men are bad and all men leave and all men cheat, and and then that's what happens in the internalization for a lot of men, right? And
Yeah.
so how would you explain that you were not, that wasn't, or was it at one point in time, did you have to come to terms with the fact that your father wasn't the role model that you really wanted and craved potentially?
Yeah, it was difficult. I went through that. There was anger there and all of that. I mean, of course, he was supposed to be my father, but I think part of it was because it wasn't so prevalent in me, because I think that because growing up, he wasn't really there even when he was, you know what I mean? Like he wasn't present
Mhm,
anyways when
mhm,
he was together with my mom. So my mom left him when I was 10 years old when she left him. And so those 10 years, he didn't show up for soccer games. It was my mom and my grandmother. I spent the first 5 years of my life in the hospital because I was so very sick. I almost died a few times. And he wasn't there then either. It was my mom and my
mm,
grandmother who were there supporting me. So there was some anger, but it wasn't as prevalent because I was just used to being around my mom and my grandmother, because that's really pretty much all I knew. Yeah, I mean, I have to admit I'm a human being, and of course I wanted a male role model in my life, and not having that, so I was angry about that. But I just learned to, he is who he is. He made his choices, and obviously I didn't see this till I got older and got on in years in my life, but he made his choices, and he chose to go the route that he did, and that was it. It was his choice. I haven't seen or spoken to him since I was 14, and I'm now 53. So
it's so
I
wild.
wouldn't even know him if I saw him on the street.
So crazy. So when
Yeah.
you're thinking about that, and if someone's
Hmm.
listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, there's no way that I can release the bitterness and the anger, what would you
Hmm.
say? Are certain steps or ways that people could perceive the process of forgiveness from where you're at now, even though, you said you went through those times of anger and
Hmm.
resentment and felt
Hmm.
the gap of not having a dad?
Well, I think we have to look at it as, if you're holding on to that anger and that resentment, that's not serving you. You're the only one it's hurting. So realize that. I think that's probably the most important thing, is to realize that you being angry and holding on to all of that is only harming you and the people around you, the people you surround yourself with. That person that you're angry with or resent for whatever it is they did to you, they're not going to feel it. they they're not there to feel it, so it doesn't serve you. And believe me, that is not an easy thing to do. It takes work, it takes inner work to do that, but I think you have to do the inner work for your own sanity and for your own well-being, because you're the only one you're harming when you're holding on to that resentment. And forgiveness is the key, I think, to living a more authentic and true life. If you're holding on to anger, what good is that? That's going to jade you. That's going to carry, you're going to carry that through your life, and spills out onto all the people you come in contact with. But most importantly, it affects your relationship with you, because the relationship you have with yourself is the longest standing and most important relationship you will ever have in your life. So why
Mm.
harm yourself?
Mm. And people don't see it though often, yes? They don't see that
Yeah.
it's harmful because it's projected outward, and it's something that just becomes ingrained pattern of behavior
Yeah,
that is so difficult to disrupt. But I love
it
it that you
is.
talked about the key operative really is in being able to develop a healthy communication.
Yeah.
And I also such a great bridge by how you described a warrior, that they stand in their truth and their power, but yet at the same time, they go after what they want. So they're
Hmm.
still, that's such a beautiful, so strong. It's such a strong masculine description. And it sounds like that feels good for you. That's authentically who you are, is that you own that you're here to speak your truth and get after it.
Yeah, absolutely. I
So
think
good.
that, I mean, that's part of why we're here. I think we're all sent here with gifts. Every single one of us has a gift or multiple gifts. And I think that it's our duty or our responsibility to share those gifts with the world. Who are we to say, no, I'm not going to share that? You are depriving the world. The gift isn't about you. It's so much bigger than you. It's about what you're giving back and impacting in the world through your gifts. It's your responsibility to share that, to give back to the world. That's part of why you're here.
Well, what gets in the way
I
in your
think
mind?
ourselves. I think
Yeah.
ourselves, we get in the way of ourselves. Learn to get the hell out of your own way. And again, all of this stuff is not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of practice. You have to be willing to put in the work and do that inner work. And we are constantly evolving as human beings. The work is never done. It is never, ever done. We never reach that point where we say, okay, I'm here. I've done all my work. I'm perfect now. I'm good to go. No, you're constantly working on yourself. And I think we have to keep that in mind, that it's a journey. That's what it's about, is the journey.
And celebrating that process and bring some fun
Yes,
people along for the ride. So
that's right.
kind of a funny question, but what is
Sure.
your, Brad, what's your favorite failure? Like, what's something in your life that was like an epic potentially, or small, but something that really was a pivot for you as far as your growth?
I think I was very stuck in a competition mindset. I
Mm,
was always, when I first made the jump into entrepreneurship as a photographer, the first 2 years, I was stuck in that competition mindset. And it took a lot of work to get out of that place, to where I finally got to the point where I realized that me comparing myself to others, other photographers, other entrepreneurs, I thought I'd be here by now at the 1 year mark. I thought I'd be at this point. I'm nowhere near that. Or I thought I'd be at this point at the 2 year mark, nowhere near that. And, to realize that, again, you're not serving yourself. You're only damaging yourself. You're only harming yourself by being stuck in that. But I think for me, when I managed to pull myself out of that and realize that really the only competition I should be concerned about is the competition of me. As long as
mm,
I can look back and see over the course of that 2 years that I'm improving as a photographer, as an entrepreneur, and as a person, that's all that matters.
mm,
There is more than enough work to go around for everybody, no matter what industry you work in, whether it be a coach, a photographer, an artist, whatever it is, there's more than enough to go around for everybody. And that took a lot of work to shift that mindset. And that was huge for me, because I
mm.
was
Do you
stuck
remember the
deep in
time
it.
of where you were like, this is enough? Like, enough is enough. Was there anything in particular that happened to you that you just knew that it was something that you had to release?
I don't think there was anything in particular that sticks out. It's just I got tired of
You were
feeling
tired.
shitty,
Yeah, exactly.
about where I was and beating myself up. And listen, that's not to say that I still don't go through those moments of imposter syndrome, or the competition mindset creeps back in every now and then. I mean, again, as I said, we're human beings. It's going to happen, and the work is constant. So I think it's a matter of just being able to turn the volume down on the internal noise
Mm,
and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and get past it. So now it doesn't last as long as it
mm,
did previously. But it was it was a struggle. Like I said, it was like 2 years I dealt with that shit. And I just
yeah.
got tired. It's like, okay, enough is enough. I've got to stop this. Otherwise, I'm not going anywhere. This entrepreneurial journey is not going to happen. And it's going
Mm.
to be because of me.
Oof, yeah, tough. And all entrepreneurs out there listening, that's something to to take note of, because it truly is like, entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. And in fact, there are
No.
people that I talk to as a coach, and I'm like, yeah, I'm quite sure this is the best fit for you, because it does require a level of tenacity and grittiness that
Mhm.
not everyone naturally has. Yes, we can develop those qualities,
Yeah.
certainly, but it isn't for the faint of heart, as you said. Are you looking to learn more about high performance coaching with Kate McKay? Please go to the website at kate-mckay.com to learn more. So what is then, how would you describe then, what is healthy competition then?
Healthy competition is, you know, looking at whoever's working in your industry and appreciating the work that they're doing. Have
Mm,
conversations with them, reach out to them. It's okay to talk to them. Like I said, I don't I don't subscribe. I try my best not to subscribe to that competition anymore. And I think it's turned into an appreciation for
Mm,
the work that other in photography, in my photography world, specifically, for the work that they do and appreciating that art that they create. I mean, a big part of it too is realizing that no one else has my eye. No one else see things the way I do in terms of being a photographer. You can give myself and three other photographers one thing to shoot, to photograph. We're all going to come up with different versions of it. So I think realizing that no one else is me, no one else brings to my clients what I bring to them, because no one else is me. And that, I
yes.
think that is another key, is realizing that you are unique, you are special, you are a magical unicorn in your own right. And no one else can bring to the table what you do, because no one else is you. So that was a
Mm,
big part of that process for me too, is
yeah.
getting to that point.
And I love that when we look, and I want to really dig into your work, but like, what was that journey into knowing that you wanted to be a photographer? Was it something you wanted to be when, even when you were young, or what was that journey in?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. That's what I wanted to do. I played
Ah,
soccer for 8 years, and
yep.
that was my goal back then. The photography, I got bit by the photography bug in high school. I took a photography class and I immediately fell in love with it. It was incredible because I learned how to shoot on black and white film. So I was developing images in the darkroom, and that process alone was so magical for me, to see something that I created in a camera come to life on a piece of paper as I ran it through the chemical baths to develop. That was just such a magical process for me, and that's where I fell in love with photography. And it's been my first love and my first passion since. I mean, it's just such a beautiful art form. You as a photographer, capturing a moment in time that can never ever be captured again. There's something so beautiful about that, and being
Mm,
able to share that with the world. And you know, it's incredible. So my journey into photography started back in high school. And the funny thing is, I never wanted to photograph people. My thing was architecture and landscapes. I had
yes, I
no
know you were
interest in
telling me
photographing
that.
people.
So you have to tell us. So you now what talk a little bit about what you do in photography
Yeah, so
as that
I'm a boudoir.
component of your business, obviously.
Yeah. I'm a boudoir photographer, so it's all about photographing women and showing them themselves in a light that they don't normally get to see themselves in, capturing their beauty, inner and outer, through creating this experience where we get to collaborate and create these images of who they truly are, like capturing women in their essence. It is such a
Mm,
powerful experience. I mean, for me as the photographer on the other side of the camera, I get to witness transformation unfold right before my very eyes. And that is one of the greatest gifts and one of the most beautiful things that any human being could witness, is transformation. And it's so powerful. And I just love everything about it. It's to be able to give that gift to another human being and to have impact in that way is so beautiful. But like I said, I had no interest in photographing people. I worked in corporate for 12 and a half years. And about 3 or 4 years into my career there, I was, to put it politely, tasked with the responsibility of doing the corporate headshots. And that's where I fell in love with photographing people, is because I had that opportunity as a person sat for their portrait. I could learn a bit about who they are, what they do, and connect with them on a human level through conversation. So that's where my love for photographing people began.
I love that. Well, I'm curious about it because it's such an intimate, photographing people is so intimate. And then photographing boudoir pictures for women,
Mhm.
wow, so super intimate. And you're a
Yeah.
man. And
Yeah.
it's also the same thing with your podcast. You
Mhm.
interview women. And so
Yes.
I'm wondering, what is your magic sauce, Brad, for building trust? How do you build that level of trust with women, that women are willing to share their authentic self with you?
I think that just goes back to what we talked about earlier, is me just being able to be vulnerable, show women who I truly am, and be authentically me. and creating a space for women where they feel safe to share. I mean, with the photography piece of it, it starts right from the initial point of contact, establishing and building that trust and having the conversation and letting them know that they can trust in me and they can reach out to me if they have questions about their shoot or whatever the case may be, but keeping an open line of communication. I honestly believe that conversation is the catalyst for everything, for change, for all of it. It's you have to have an open line of communication, and that helps to establish that trust, is being open to the conversation and being open to sharing and listening is so key with the podcast. And I mean, when you're speaking with someone, when you're having a conversation just like you and I are, we have to listen as podcast hosts. That's our duty, that's our responsibility, to listen. You wouldn't believe, Kate, how many women have come to me and said that they've been on podcasts and felt like they weren't even being listened to. And I think, how is that even possible? That's your job. That's the one job, one of the most important jobs you have as a podcast host, is to listen to what your guests are saying, because it's about them. It's about shining a light on them, just like the photography. It's about them. It's nothing to do with me. It's about shining a light on them and letting them express who they truly are. That's what it's about. So I think it's just being open to conversation and just sharing that vulnerability and being authentically who I am is what creates that space. I had a friend of mine tell me that I have an incredible skill set, and that is holding space for women. And I said to her, I said, but I don't look at that as a skill. I just do it. I don't know
That's
how
why
I do.
I'm
I just
right.
do
That's
it.
why I'm like picking at you, trying to drill in that a little bit, because that is your secret sauce, and you can make a million if you could teach men this, right? And so, no, I'm serious. So what if I was your coach? This is what I would say. I'd be
Okay.
like, all right, what I want you to notice, I want you to start writing down what is that you're doing physically, mentally, emotionally that allows that space, step by step, because your money's in the magic, right? So it's that thing that we just do, we
Yeah.
just do it. And truly, man, it's such a powerful thing to be able to say, yeah, these are some tools. I don't know what I do, I just do it, right? but it really is your secret sauce. And
Thank you.
I would love that, as you ask your friends, hey, what is it about me that you think, why am I so safe? Because ultimately that is the core need of a human. And when we're talking about intimate relationship, any kind of form of communication, and so few people and so few men feel
Yeah.
safe. And I think that we as women are lucky because we get to hang out and be with other women. And we know how that works, but men don't have that same luxury. And
Right.
unfortunately, based on our culture. What was the transition, I guess, from the photography and the boudoir photography, which you're very, very beautifully skilled at,
Thank you.
into the podcasting world?
I think it was just really a natural progression because I was already working solely with women. Um, the idea came to me because I was thinking, this is great. I love that I get to do this work. I get to marry my first love and my first passion with giving back to and having impact on others. But it started to feel there wasn't enough of an impact. Yes, it was great. But the thing with the photography business is it was only my client and I that felt the impact of what we were creating together. And I got to the point where I started to feel like I wanted to have a bigger impact and I wanted to reach more people. So I started to think about the fact that I work solely with women coming from a corporate culture, corporate background. I saw how women get treated in that world in terms of not getting equal pay for doing the same job as their male counterparts, not enough women in C-suite level positions. And so it got me thinking, why don't I kind of take what I'm doing with the photography where I solely focus on women and transplant that or turn that into a podcast where I focus the podcast solely on women. So the corporate culture was a big piece of that inspiration. And of course, the fact that at the time and even now, I don't know or didn't know of many, if any, men that hosted a platform that solely focused and highlighted women. And as you know, Kate, being a podcast host, you have to have something unique, some unique flavor to your podcast that's going to make it stand out among the tons of podcasts that are out there. So I thought this is a perfect opportunity. I can focus my podcast solely on women. My daughters are a huge inspiration behind that. My wife, and of course my mom and my grandmother, these 5 women, they are my why for all of it, for the photography, and now more specifically and recently is the podcast, because of what these 5 women have given to me and brought to my life and shown me and taught me. And I owe them all an unpayable debt for all that they've done for me and all that they've taught me. And I mean, being around women most of my life, I don't know any different. So I figured, why not? Why not? Women deserve to be celebrated, and they're not celebrated enough. So I
Mm.
figured, why not create a platform that solely celebrates, highlights, and focuses on women and sharing their stories with the world? Because I believe that we all, as human beings, never mind the masculine and feminine, man versus woman, we all have a story to share. Every single human being on this planet has a story to share, and that story will undoubtedly impact at least one person's life. And I think it's our, again, this goes back to our gifts as well. It's our responsibility to share those stories with the world, because it will give someone hope or inspiration. And so if I could take what I was doing with the photography and turn that into a podcast where I focused it solely on women, because yes, there are tons of women out there who have platforms that highlight and empower and elevate women, and that's amazing, beautiful, but there aren't many, if any, men out there who do it. So I thought, I am going to be the spoke in the wheel for change around this mindset too, the bullshit mindset of the old boys club. And that's one of the things I really wanted for the podcast, is to be the spoke in the wheel for change around that mindset and that way of thinking. So
What's so interesting is there's that reverse sexism where women, our culture's like, no, this is for women only,
mhm,
and I read something recently in the Wall Street Journal about Patterson, that famous author, and he
yeah,
wrote a book around the Black culture. The main
yeah,
protagonist was a Black person, and
mhm.
they wouldn't publish his book because a white person can't write from the perspective of a Black person, so we're not going to publish it. And I was so saddened by that.
Mhm.
When you think about, we can't even allow ourselves to imagine as one being, we are all one
Yeah,
being, that
yeah,
we can, and he did all the research, it was, and so to me, it's shocking that in this woke culture, because that's part of it, Brad, is that
yeah,
we have this culture where it's like, oh no, only we can't talk about the suffering of this person or that person because we haven't experienced it. We've all experienced suffering,
yeah, for
whether
sure.
in this life at some level, karmically coming into another life, male or female, Black or white, whatever race, religion. We have all experienced suffering. Suffering is universal.
Yeah,
Transcendence is universal.
yes,
So I'm
absolutely.
totally into this conversation because I can't agree with you more. Have you had pushback from people in regards to
Um,
this?
Pushback. I have to say, the community that we have built has been incredibly supportive. I have a handful or a couple handfuls of women who are incredible cheerleaders for me and supporters of what I do. And they're on board. They always tell me, whatever you're doing, Brad, I don't care what, I want to be part of it. It doesn't matter what it is. So there hasn't been any real pushback, although one instance comes to mind. It was back in the summer. I was speaking with a woman. We were doing a discovery call to talk about having her on the podcast. And so I shared my story with her. She shared hers with me. And she, by the end of our, near the end of our discussion, she said, I can't get on board with what you're doing because you use the word empowerment, and that insinuates that you are giving power to someone. And
Whoa.
my thought immediately was, okay, well, I guess I would assume, and I really shouldn't assume because it makes an ass of you and me, but I'm assuming that she would not have spoken that way to a woman if it was a woman using that word. But
No.
because I'm a male, I got the feeling that she's insinuating that I am insinuating that I'm giving power to women, which she should have known by the story that I just told her of why I'm doing the work I do, that has nothing to do with it. And I was taken aback. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's okay. you have your beliefs and you can go your way. You're obviously not meant to be part of this platform because you don't resonate with the work I'm doing, and that's okay. So I sent her on her way, but that is really the only instance where I've encountered pushback. So I've been very, very lucky. I have to say I'm very, very blessed and lucky to have the incredible support system and community I do have around me, because they're all so incredibly supportive, and it's amazing. And you're one of those supporters too, Caitlin. I
Oh,
appreciate your
absolutely.
support.
Oh, no, I think it's fantastic. So where do you see this? What is your growth vision? That because this is something that is very meaningful to you and has a
Yeah,
very significant why. What do you
yeah.
see for this, for you moving forward, Brad?
This, to me, this isn't just a podcast. This is a movement. This is a global movement. I truly want millions of women on board with this and part of the community and growing the community. I think that now is the time for a message like this. I think that we as men need to start standing up and showing women that we are allies and we support you, we hear you, we see you. And if you have a platform, share it with the women. That like I said, that's the whole focus of my platform. And I want Empowerography to be a global brand, a global name. I want to turn this into a women's empowerment conference that travels around the world, because in North America, yes, women have had struggles, absolutely, because of men and the patriarchy and all the other bullshit that goes along with it. But there are a lot of places in the world where the women have it a whole lot worse than the women do here. So I want to bring my message, or sorry, I want to bring our message to the world and share that with the world, because I think the world needs it now more than ever. I think we need to stop the divisiveness and all the bullshit of masculine versus feminine. As you said, we are all one. We are all, when it comes down to it, we are all human beings. No more of this masculine versus feminine competition bullshit. If we can come together as human beings and unite, think of how much more power we will have together as a united unit, as one unit together. We will be able to accomplish and change so much in this world. So I think that's where we need to shift the thinking, and men need to start standing up. So I want this to be global. I want to blow this shit up and explode it onto the world.
I love it. Isn't it the best? I know,
It
and I love it
is.
because it just goes right back to, like, you know what? You're going to go after it. And
Yeah.
it's like, it's
Yep.
something you're
Nothing is
that
going to
deeply
stop it.
committed to. No,
Nothing.
absolutely. I'm totally, yeah, inspired by you.
As I am by you, Kate. You're an
Yeah, oh my
incredible
gosh, we
inspiration
both
too.
love that word. We
Yes.
both love that word. And I love the word empower. And I'll tell you the truth about my relationship with the word empower, as I never
Mhm.
liked it. I was like, that word, it's like women use it a lot. And in a way, it's
Yeah.
like, no, women own your power. It's like you
Mhm.
don't need to be in relationship or business with another woman to be your success. And that's why a lot of women will partner with other women or
Right.
see their identity in relationship. Well, the origin of the word competition is COM, which is the origin of
Mhm.
community. So there is
Yeah.
a piece of that where there is this tribal component. But I've learned to accept the word empower and to embrace it, because I've become far more community centered. I'm like the
Mhm.
opposite of you, Brad, where I was like, no, I was that lone wolf and
Yeah.
didn't have the role model that you had of the community. And so now I'm moving back into community, and I'm
I
just
love
so
that.
thrilled to be part of yours. So we will share all the notes, and where
Yep.
people can find you and your
Mhm.
podcast and your photography. And then also, is there one thing, if you were to have a billboard, or if you wanted to have people know one thing, what would that be?
You are enough.
Mm,
You are enough, and you can accomplish anything you want in this life. Nothing is unattainable. You can do anything you want. And we've
mm,
tried to instill that into our girls growing up from when they were young, because I think we have to do that with our children from a very young age, so that it's ingrained into them, it's embedded into them, so that they grow up just, it's part of their DNA. They don't know any different. So I would say you are enough, and you can accomplish anything in this world that you want. So you can set your mind to.
So beautiful. And what I love to witness, Brad, is that you are a man that has been well loved. And it's beautiful to witness, and it's not very common. So I
Mhm.
want to honor your mother and your
Thank
grandmother
you.
in this podcast and thank them for loving you so deeply so that you can do the work. And I'm grateful that I've met them through you. So thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Kate. Thank you for that. I
Yeah.
really, really appreciate that. That touches my heart. That means the world to me. Thank you.
Yes. And thank you, Brad. And thank you to all the viewers and listeners who tuned in. I'm so grateful for all of you to be part of my community as we celebrate each other and move into the highest and best version of who we came here to be as goddess and warriors, empowering each other to step into our greatness. So thank
I
you
saw
so
what you
much,
did there.
Brad. I know. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Master Your Life. If you enjoyed this episode, please like this and share it so that you can get notices for the next episode, releasing every